Thanks, Gabriel, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be, although virtually, but there with you. And actually, I will try to really walk you through the overall conversation that we and you have discussed so far today. What I'm going to do is really to share with you what's going on in the market by looking more specifically at the way in which really customer journeys are transforming and converting toward a more and more immersive experience that put the human really at the center of it, but how it will also be integrated when it comes to taking into account the presence of different channels. Well, for sure, talking about overall customer experience and Excel, the overall customer journey, it's something that is not new across the different sectors. Personally, will bring you some examples that comes from the retail industry, but it might be really applied also across all the other sectors. What is important is really to try to build a more and more loyalty-focused relationship with brand, with companies, in order to really increase trust overall, every time and everywhere. And that's a crucial point, actually, because when we talk nowadays about Excel, customer experience, and in particular customer engagement, we really need to take into account how relationship has gone toward the different channels and across the different channels, whether in store, whether online, when we talk about e-commerce or marketplaces, as well as being more and more omni-channel. Why? Because it's important to really reach the customer at the empathetic level in order to retain loyal customers, but also to engage new one. Building a relationship that is based on value, not just on need. And this will increase time after time, basically the loyalty and the loyal relationship that exists. And gender trust means inevitably to really increase the way in which relationship happens, not only in store, not only face-to-face, but also online through e-commerce, for example. So being ready and being here for the customer, there for the customer, really anytime, everywhere. Of course, the store does take there and that play a crucial role. We will see it through the course of the presentation. And what I'm going to do with you today here is really to provide you a sort of snapshot of the current situation when we talk about customer experience as a core business processes, when we talk about the overall company's value chain, but also by providing you fresh and original data based on our latest research. Let's jump directly to what's going on and what is going wrong still when we talk about customer experience. Because complexity is one of the buzzwords that usually are really brought into the conversation when talking with companies. And that's why, and that's the reason why we still talk about complexity, is because complexity comes from the different customer interfaces as well as the different enterprises interfaces. So there are different levels, if we want to say that, of interaction and needs of interaction with customers that still need to really broad and at the highest level of maturity. There is a crucial element that can bridge all of them and can bridge all channels and all communications through channels across them, that is made by data and the importance of data accuracy across the overall value chain, as I said before. This is something that should be enabled by technology as a key element for really provide an integrated and reflect this integration to the overall customer journey across the different applications, across the different systems, but taking into account also one crucial aspect that has to do with security and the need for really respond in terms of compliance, for example, or facing the real standard regulations that we all know, especially in Europe, exist, not only at the national level, but thinking about the GDPR at the supranational level, at European level. That's aspect, because the way in which actually those complexity might be overcome is to look more and more at the way in which customer journey should be and need to be personalized through core capabilities that have to be implemented and are currently implemented across different examples and instances of companies that are doing so. In order to enhance overall customer experience, applications relate more and more on content optimization, as I said before, on loyalty, as well as identity management, recommendation, and really reach the customer at the highest level of personalization. There is a common thread and there is a common aspect that stay here when we talk about loyalty, when we talk about really personalize and come closer in terms of trust, example, toward the customer, that has to do inevitably with the sustainability. It's something that it's inevitably embedded across the different applications and the different aspects that are listed here. And the way in which these are represented in terms of customer journey is really provide, at the end of the day, customers through recommendations, through personalized offers, the impact of each single actions towards the planet. There is always a journey that inevitably peers and companies really need to undertake when it comes to integrate all those applications all together. As you can see, basically, there is still room and margin to improvement, of course, it's always like that. But what really matters, what is really important is that by integrating more and more all applications, both internally, but also externally, thinking about not just the complexity that I mentioned to you before when we talk about customer and consumers interfaces as well as enterprise interfaces, but also toward the entire ecosystem. And the way in which this is leveraged in terms of AI and machine learning applications really, at the end of the day, make the difference. There are different examples of these, and one that I would like to share with you today is the case of Adidas, but just really to provide you the evidence that something exists and something can be achieved at the highest, or at least at the higher level of customer journey personalization across the different channels. Because at the end of the day, as the motto from Adidas came from and says, experience it all. And it happens across the different channels, whether online, whether offline, and even online in a more and more immersive way, in order really to build at the end a really sense of community, in order to share values, to come closer to the customers in terms of empathy. There are different examples of different companies that might leverage more or less some channels rather than other, like for example GetGo, that goes more on self-service, on self-checkout, in order to really try to balance the need for automation with need of implementing hybrid solution. Or talking about payment and taking into account the example of Extra Wine in terms that has leveraged inevitably as a digital native company, a way in which streamline the customer journey need to really avoid all the existing frictions in terms of checkout, in terms of fraud, but also at the same time expanding their presence across the different markets. There is a crucial element on that has to do with the store format. An example of this comes from Max Spencer, for example, that really need to automate each single operations in the store in order to really engage and provide a frictionless shopping experience. And the way in which I really cite and take into account the importance of the role of the store is because it's just one of the big interfaces through which omnichannel experience happens. And it's a hub where personas, customers, whether personas are employee or customers, really are at the core, at the center of it, and where the different applications, is really the crossroad at the end of the day between the technologies, between, all the different objectives, whether business really matters and really take place. And that's the way in which we really have to conceive the physical presence of the company, of the overall company, in the way in which really, when we talk about the customer journey cross channels, it happens whole here. And this is the crossroad, the hub in which things or the really dream came true. what is important is that when we talk about overall customer journey and customer experience, we really need to take into account, into consideration the fact that really caring about a customer is something that do not pertain only to a specific function within the organization. Usually tend to be always associated to marketing. Whenever and how you call it, basically the crucial aspect is the fact that a function, whether it's marketing, whether it is finance, for example, need to really work together across and along the different organizations' value chain. And this is really a collaboration and a collaborative approach that organizations need really to take into account across the different functions, whether it's supply chain, so we are talking about even back office or front office, whether it's online or in store with store systems and operations, and here it comes to the role of chief operating officers, but even e-commerce. So when we talk and we inevitably call into action the decision makers coming from chief digital commerce officer, all the aspects that really need to come together in order to enhance overall experience. So whether it's not just related to customers only, but also to the employee. This is something and a theme that I'm pretty sure has been many times mentioned, not just today, but also in the really last month, because it's central. And the way in which this is reflected in terms of collaboration among personas across the different organization functions is where really the integration at the end of the day might happen. And it's the way in which at the end of the day, omni-channel, it happens and commerce take place. There is another aspect that I mentioned to you before that it still represent a challenge somehow, but just because really organizations and peers really need to achieve the highest level of data accuracy. And this has to do with really managing, processing, analyzing the great amount of data that comes from the different interfaces, whether it's the app, whether it's the store, or whether are the different other moments of interaction through which customers really can engage with brand, whether through mobile app or web, but even talking about Web3, for example, an immersive experience. These really provide you a great opportunity and a good opportunity to share data, to select the most accurate data, and in exchange give to customers something that is more and more personalized. Of course, there is another aspect that needs to be taken into account, and this goes hand to hand inevitably with the aspect of compliance, with the aspect of regulatory and regulations that exist that has to do with identity management, whether data comes from customers or from product or within the overall partners ecosystem. It's important to really gather the consent from customers, from human in general, because thinking about employees is there. Consent is part of it. And to leverage it at best, what is important is really also to enhance the applications and implementation of AI and machine learning analytics that can really digest in a more automated way the different sources and data sources coming whether from marketing, but also from the digital team, from store associate, thinking about, for example, the more specifically the retail organizations as an example of it, but also from the loyalty, in order to really, at the end of the day, come to a single version of the truth. So I really want to leave you today with 4 key takeaways. First of all, something that I mentioned inevitably through the course of the presentation. Bridging online and offline world. It's something that has been really and a lot mentioned, not only in the last 2 years, honestly, but something that has been, especially in retail, but also, again, across the different companies and the different sectors since decade. And integrating online and physical is crucial in order to really enhance the overall customer journey and customer experience. Integrating the different interfaces and channels and communications and data that flows through them. The Experience Hub, as I said, the store, creating an immersive shopping journey is something that really put the human at the center, adopting a human-centered approach through which customer engagement might take place in terms of benefit and in terms of concrete KPIs that can be measured also through the course of the time. First of all, the complete view of customer, the 360 view of the customers, but also in terms of customer lifetime value, because this is something that really matters when it comes to retain loyal customer. 3, the collaborative approach that should exist in order to really improve a real-time contextual customer experience strategies involving all the major stakeholders within the organizations and across the different functions. And last, but definitely not least, data is what the flows, the blood, if you want, that really goes hand to hand within the organizations, across the channels, toward the customers, and that at the end of the day really helps you to make the difference when it comes to achieve a omni-channel level of your business and operating model. And with that, I really thank you, all of you, for the attention, and lend over to Gabriel. Thank you so much.